It's that time. We're about to kick off an episode of Consulting Unfiltered. We're here to share the real talk on career growth in finance and consulting. You want to be a CFO? You want to get to partner at a firm? Learn from true stories on how to achieve these goals. We will not hold back on anything. Get ready to laugh, learn, and level up your game. Is the advisor role more impactful than the traditional finance roles? Let's discuss the value of being a strategic advisor and what we bring to clients. Welcome to Consulting Unfiltered, Adventures in Leadership. I was listening to the SaaStr podcast recently because, we're also launching a new software. And the host said, do not hire anyone who is strategic, specifically called out strategy. Don't hire anyone who talks about strategy. Now, of course, he's talking about sales and marketing positions. But what about in consulting? That's what we do in consulting. We are strategic for the businesses, things that they can't do themselves. So we're going to be exploring what it means to be a strategic advisor in the consulting space. How does this role different from like a bookkeeper, a controller, or maybe even the CFO, who we're going to be talking today? Thanks, Cynthia, for joining us. How about you tell me a little bit about your career journey and maybe one or two places where you learned to be more strategic?
Sure. So I took a non-traditional role in accounting. I didn't go to college right out of high school or do anything like that. My first job was as an AR clerk in a multi-company business. They had like 30 locations. They did financing. In addition to financing, they did floor planning for vehicles, all their inventory, all the things. And my direct supervisor took an interest in my work skills. They sent me off to get an associate's degree in accounting and then just continually gave me more and more to do. After I got my associate's degree, I was at that company for 5 or 6 years, and then I moved to just a basic accounting role in a company, and from there moved on to a controller position where you hit the ceiling of how much can you make without an accounting degree, and I went back for my bachelor's degree. From there, started my own side business at a point in my life that I needed to spend more time with my family, and learned all the things about how to take care of everybody's technical problems on the fly, things like that, and at one point decided to go for my master's degree. When I had to relocate in like 2010-ish, I started working for a firm that was 100% outsourcing, which enabled me to learn a whole lot more about strategy.
Mm-hmm. I like that. So, everybody always talks about these different roles, and I know I say this all the time. Nobody knows what the roles in accounting are. They're not well defined. And it's not just accounting, and I say the same thing about marketing. But in accounting, nobody really knows what these roles are supposed to mean, and especially for businesses in the space that we're in, where they're businesses that are kind of growing up. They used to be just the owner runs the books, and now they're hiring people, maybe internal, maybe external. Now they're hiring more people. They have 2 or 3 people in the accounting department. But when we talk about strategy in the accounting space, what are we talking about? What do we mean by being strategic versus bank reconciliations or something?
Yeah, so, as you initially start, whether you went to college for it or not, you're doing transactional work. So you're recording what already happened or is happening today in the business. Getting more strategic is like being able to read that data and predict what may happen in your industry or your specific business based on what kind of financing you have, what kind of corporation it is. Do you need to do some specific tax planning, which a lot of our clients have seen in recent years based on R&D credit information? And just being able to look at the data and come up with some sort of plan with the business owner is more strategic than presenting a financial statement to them and say, here you go, this is how you did this month. So taking that data for them, interpreting it, and being able to advise them on what may be happening and what they need to plan for.
I like that a lot because, oftentimes I think when people go into business, they say usually they're very good salespeople, right? They know how to sell themselves, they know how to sell their product, they know how to sell their service, but then translating that into what does that mean for me in a financial space is very difficult. So, so what's one skill that's essential for becoming a successful strategic advisor?
I think for me, it was being able to tell a story on the fly. So when you first start working with a client, they're looking for expertise. They're looking for knowledge that they don't particularly have. The business owner might have a feeling about what's going on in their business, but they don't know how to interpret the data that they're looking at day to day. And being able to just hop in on the fly, open a financial statement and start looking at trended data particularly and say, hey, Joe, what happened last quarter? I see you took a 30% dip and also your costs are going up. So let's talk about last quarter and what we may need to understand from that. I once had a job interview in a coffee shop where the owner handed me the books and he had removed all the the AR from the books and asked me to analyze his company. And I was like, you're insolvent. And it was an interesting interview. And then he started laughing and said, yeah, I took all the important stuff out. I moved the cash out. I did this, I did that. And he's like, it's QuickBooks. We can do anything. So he just wanted to see if I would pick up on the areas of concern.
Mm-hmm. Well, in that situation, I mean, one of the hardest things I think when it comes to being strategic or just being an advisor in general is telling them the bad news. It's one of the hardest things to discuss with a customer. And if they can see right away that you're not going to shy away from that bad news, I mean, I think that is
exactly.
You learned a lot, both, socially and, how smart you are with that kind of thing. So how do you build trust? Like how do you build up that credibility when you are advising customers? How does that work?
When you're with a brand new client, it's going to be a little different than somebody you've worked with for years. In my experience, everybody connects differently. You're going to have the client that connects on data alone. You're going to have the other client that they want to know you. They want to know who you are, where you came from, what's your background, your experience. Like, have you ever really worked with a independent custom home builder, Cynthia? And if you're going to tell me yes, then you better give me some examples of what you had to deal with them. So you just kind of have to build the credibility with your experiences and your background.
Yeah. So what do you think is one go-to that do you have any like go-to stories or go-to questions that you ask to help to build up that credibility?
I don't know if I ever have a go-to. I basically listening to the client. I once worked with a fractional COO and he was like, oh, you're a thinker and a doer. And I can see it on your face while you're working on it. So looking at their data and then asking the questions that the data is telling me and asking the hard questions, like you said. Like, hey, I see this huge dip and then 3 months later, massive growth. Is it just because we forgot to bill our customers? Asking the hard questions, asking them where the cash is, if there's no cash and it's all accounts receivable. Just kind of connecting with them to identify what is important to that business owner.
I think you're hitting in on something that's so important that so many people don't think about. And they think that they walk into these meetings, right? I walk into the meeting and I am the one who is supposed to be telling this business what to do. So I'm supposed to come in with my speech prepared, my PowerPoint made, whatever it is. But then what happens is you get in there and the people who kind of feel more comfortable and being a strategic advisor, they go in there and they make the client present.
Yes.
They make the client talk. They ask all the questions to the client And even through some of that questioning, the clients start to like feel more comfortable and build up that trust, right?
You're just kind of identifying points from the data they've given you and say, talk to me about this. Tell me what was going on in January of 2023 to make this dip. And generally, the data that's there is going to give you some questions that you can ask. And most business owners, they have a feeling about how their business is doing. They just don't know how to read the data that's in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you're asking those kind of questions, do you have ever somebody who says like, so when are you going to present? When are you going to start? When are you going to stop asking questions? Or have you ever had somebody turn it around on you like that?
Yes. Yeah. So basically when somebody turns it around, you're just, I can't provide any insight without learning from you. So it's a two-way interview process. They want to know what I know, but I need to know about their business. So we just kind of have that authentic conversation of, I cannot provide you with any strategic consulting if we can't get through this initial question and answer session. I need to learn about your business. I don't work in your business. You work in your business. You're the one with all the insight. I just see data and what the data is telling me.
Right. I like that. So then what helped you to transition from, because it sounded like you did originally, you were more task-based when you start out, and all of us are, right? We all learn how to enter a bill, and then we learn how to enter an invoice, and then we learn how to pay the bill, and then we learn how to reconcile the cash, right? Like there's small steps that we all have taken over the years, but then how do you go from doing those kind of task-based things and transition to, okay, let me look at the results of what I just did and what that means, being more strategic?
Right. So, I've had a lot of different jobs through my career and a lot of clients. I think transitioning, if you're sitting in a seat where you're just providing the financials, you still have an opportunity to not just print that report and put it in front of your supervisor. You can take that report and do the balance sheet KPIs, look at what's important to the business, write them out, give your interpretation, and sit down with your supervisor or the business owner, whoever is the reader of those financials, and say, hey, can we talk about my insights and you help me better understand why am I right, why am I wrong? There has to be a point in your career that you not only take control of where you're going to go in the future, but you identify that I'm at a turning point and I need somebody to help me. And I was lucky. I had people step up and they're like, oh my gosh, you want to learn more? Oh my gosh, you want to learn more? I did side work for a CPA for years, and I tell people this story all the time. He used to just drop a box on my front porch with a note on it. That was back when it was all paper, right? I have to do this estate tax return on Monday. Happy weekend to you. It was just a big pile of paperwork. And I had to go figure the things out. And then he would tell me what I did wrong the next week or what I did right. Mm-hmm. So just being able to identify that you're at the point that you want to learn more is a good turning point.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a big difference too in the ability to start making decisions, right? Mm-hmm. Because I remember one of my first projects that for Fourlane, one of my first projects was that we were to convert a company from Intact that had been set up. They had a whole bunch of different federal grants, and we had to convert them back into QuickBooks. And basically, I was left with a project that somebody else was managing. They had no idea what was happening, and I had to look at their accounting file in Intact and their data. They actually gave me their data because they had canceled their Intact environment, just exported everything, and I had to figure out, how am I supposed to set this up in QuickBooks to track it appropriately, and then also to make sure that they are getting the data that they need out of it, right? So how do I structure it without overkill, putting 7,000 lines on their chart of accounts? How do I structure it? So the ability to start making decisions also, right? So reading data and feeling comfortable making decisions maybe. When did you, or does that hit home for you at all?
It does. I mean, I had to do a job cost conversion. We had like 120 ongoing jobs at the time. We were in customized, I was working for a heavy highway contractor. We were in customized software, and the independent person that wrote the software was basically retiring. So we had to find a new system for it and also implement an estimating system at the same time. So it was, hey, you're my accounting manager, go figure it all out. So I had to go figure out how to set up the crews and the estimating system so that we knew how many trucks we needed, how many people we needed on the trucks, what the equipment was, and then pulling the data for the individual jobs to do the balances forward and put them into a new system. And I mean, I was super excited about data at that point. I was like, oh, wow, look, I figured it all out. And then my next job, I did a conversion there as well. And then I was all bored. And then my next job, and I just got bored every time I was at a single company. Because I started in multi-company accounting.
Yep.
So one company was like, wow, how do people make it through 40 hours a week with nothing to do?
Maybe that's a really good call out, right? That for the people... Yeah. You know that you have a pathway into consulting when you're sitting in your job and you're bored, right? You want to do.
Yes.
Or I heard someone the other day, I think we were talking, who was it? Oh, on the interns. The interns, we did, we had our intern exit last week, their 10-week program that we run. And they were presenting file reviews to, just internally, right? The things that they'd learned over the summer, basically, the presentations. And several of our consultants, they said, oh, I want to go dig into that client a little bit after hearing the presentation from the interns. And I was like, see, you guys are consultants, right? Because you see something and you don't just hear it and go, okay. You hear it and go like, I need to go figure out what the heck is wrong with that customer because I bet I can fix something over there, right? Like I can do it. So are there any tools, right? Maybe books or frameworks or anything that help people to kind of become more strategic?
I don't know that there were any books or anything that I read that helped me become more strategic. I mean, I was taking like corporate strategy classes in college as I was working full time. Those things helped. Logic courses were invaluable to me, like how to follow specific logic because I mean, I had never done those types of things before. So when you're working with data, you need to be able to, figure out the logic of the data. I know you and I have that conversation all the time about Salesforce. You're like, wait, stop. Let's figure out what your end result is before you do your start, Cynthia. So the logic courses were really good. I mean, now I hear they have strategic degrees. Like, they didn't have that when I was going to school. So right. That would be cool. Yeah, That would be cool. And then just, personal organization, self-help books are really helpful. I do think as a consultant, you have to be self-driven. You have to want to continue to do the work and that nobody is going to tell you when you're finished with the work. We are very deadline driven with our clients. I mean, they're paying for results and you need to want to give them the results. So just having that personal organization in place and maybe some project management training. Yeah, like all the different areas of the project.
I do think that that's kind of hard because when you are, I say this, consultants are creatives, right? When you have a really good consultant, you're creative, and creatives are not the best at organization usually.
Correct.
So if you can combine both of those things and say, like, I am going to be super creative with how to, get you from point A to point B, but then also help you organize how to get there. And that's probably one of my me as a consultant is I do like to tell customers, this is the end goal. This is how you're going to get there. This is what to do. And then I really don't like helping them get through it because I like the creative piece more than the execution piece for sure. Right. And then, so finding both of those though is very important, I think. Finding both of those is very important. You have a voice of authority. Like you have a voice. When you speak, people listen, right? And I want to know, Was that like that when you were a kid? Like, were you always like this, or did you like pick up on this along the way? And how did you pick up on this? Because even from the day you interviewed with us, I was like, oh, I need to listen to this woman.
I mean, I'm the middle child that was ignored. Maybe that did it. I don't know. I've always been like a loner, so I'm not a super. I don't talk about I don't sit around and chat. So when I say something, it's usually what I mean. I never get stuck in there's this whole drama thing behind what I want to say. It's just, I'm going to say it once and be done. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it all the time. So I don't know. Also, I had my own business for a while. I got shut down a lot. Yeah. You get shut down a lot until you hit the point where you're kind of, all right, well, I have to act like I know what I'm doing, even if I don't know what I'm doing, to get this job so that my employees have billable work to do. And then make sure that the client gets what they needed.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm always learning, always studying, trying to be on top of everything. But I never thought about I have a voice of authority and people listen.
I love it. No, I think that you do. And I do think that we're going to talk about on future podcasts too about, the presentation and how you present yourself as a consultant and what that means. So yeah, it definitely comes off very well when you're speaking with clients and with me too. Cynthia helps keep me in line all the time. So the big question today, as we wrap things up, is it okay to say that you are strategic in the accounting space, or should we stick to more traditional task-based performances? Discuss the added value strategic advisors bring to clients. That's what we want to discuss in our big question today. So let me know what you think about that, and we will see you next time on Consulting Unfiltered. And that's a wrap on another amazing episode of Consulting Unfiltered. Don't miss out on all the candid chats and practical wisdom coming your way. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected and keep taking those steps forward in your career. We'll see you soon.